Hey guys, AJ here. So it has now officially been 1 year since Tears of the Kingdom was released, and I just wanted to go over it today because, after all, it's been 1 year now. How does the game still hold up? Is it still as fantastic as everybody was saying? Breath of the Wild literally changed the industry forever. Heck, I made a whole video going over it, just how it expanded the open world genre so much and kind of defined where it was going to go moving forward. But now that it's been a year, let's review Tears of the Kingdom, see how it's doing. So I played through the entire thing within like a month after the game released, and I'm currently replaying it for the second time now. So that's where I got like all this background gameplay footage and stuff. So I just want to review it. Did it live up to the hype of the Breath of the Wild sequel, even though it was so many years later, or not? What are the game's strengths and weaknesses? I just want to go over them today, kind of in like celebration of the game's first anniversary. So thanks for clicking on this video. Hope you guys find this interesting, and let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to be frank and like 100% upfront and honest for my opinions on this game, and I think that this game absolutely lives up to the standard of being the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Honestly, it makes Breath of the Wild look like a tech demo. There's so much stuff that is in Tears of the Kingdom that just feels necessary, as if it was meant to be there the entire time, such as like caves, is a big example, more areas besides just the world, more shrines, a much more like greater abilities and stuff that you can use to interact with the world around you instead of the kind of limited ones from the Sheikah Slate. So yes, this game 100%, in my opinion, lives up to the hype of being the Breath of the Wild sequel in so many different ways. It is definitely the better game in terms of gameplay aspect and stuff like that. But how does it hold up in terms of being a Zelda game? It's okay. For if you'd want just a classic Zelda game like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening, go back and do stuff like that. Classic dungeon crawler kind of. These games probably aren't for you just because the open world is now the big selling point for Zelda games, and I absolutely love open world games, and I greatly prefer the open world format as opposed to the kind of limited one. Not saying those games aren't great. I still think in terms of like classic Zelda, Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece, and trust me, I'm going to be comparing this game to that one a lot, because Ocarina of Time set the standard for so many different things in the Zelda franchise that just haven't really been met since. So what makes this new open world format so much more fun that causes like me personally to enjoy it so much more than the old one? And that's just because of how rewarding everything you do is. I went over this in my Breath of the Wild video, and Tears of the Kingdom greatly even expands on everything Breath of the Wild has done, because no matter what you do in this game, you are getting rewarded in some aspect, such as if you're exploring the world, you're gathering materials to make food so you can expand combat so you can progress the story, everything like that. No matter where you go, there's going to be some sort of puzzle to come up with, whether it's trying to get one of the lookout landing, or not lookout landing, one of the Skyview towers activated, because there's always some little thing wrong with them. I guess, yeah, this is going into spoilers, by the way, for the game. I mean, it's been a year. I'm 100% convinced if you clicked on this video that you've already played the game. You just want to hear somebody talk about it. So whether it's getting those activated, all the different shrines and stuff like that, Koroks are also just so much more fun in this game. There's so many more different challenges. Like, yeah, you can lift up suspicious rocks and stuff like that, but transporting Koroks from one place to the other has just been so much fun, and there's been some creations, now that you can use Koroks and just move them wherever you want. Those poor little guys, they're just silly little guys. They didn't deserve it. Maybe they did for giving you golden poop. Anyway, yeah, the open world is just fantastic because it rewards you no matter what you enjoy doing. Do you enjoy combat and stuff like that? Go find a monster encampment or a cave or one of the many new bosses and stuff like that. Fight the monsters and you'll get monster parts as rewards so you can make elixirs so you can heal. You'll also get new weapons so that you can fight the tougher enemies and progress through the main story. And just while we're on the topic of enemies, enemy variety is just fantastic. There's so many new enemies and bosses added to this game. We got the likes are back, Gibdos, which are like genuinely terrifying. We got all our classic guys back, you know, the bokoblins and the moblins and the Lizalfos and stuff like that. Even though they're slightly redesigned to give the horns for weapons, there's so much more enemy variety now in this game, and that was like my biggest problem with Breath of the Wild, is there were like 4 overworld enemies. You know, you had the bokoblins, moblins, Lizalfos. Didn't really change up from that if you're fighting just regular monsters. Yeah, we had the Hinox and the Lynels for bosses and stuff like that, but if you're walking into a camp, you know, you're gonna expect the same 3 guys that all kind of function relatively similar by just using weapons. But new enemy variety is fantastic. I think the likes are probably some of my favorite, or the little tiny baby Froxes that you find down in the depths. It's because they just behave entirely differently. It's really great to see likes back also. Like, this is another thing from Ocarina of Time. They were so much more scary in Ocarina of Time. Like, they'd eat your shield and then you'd just be without it and you'd be screwed. Those guys were scary. These ones are so much more fun too, with all the different elemental variants. Just the new enemies are just greatly appreciated. And oh my gosh, the bosses in this game are fantastic. Well, for the most part, I have some issues with some of the storyline bosses, but as for the open world bosses you encounter, they're just fantastic. Breath of the Wild had guardians. They're terrifying. You can still play the guardian like theme song when it starts attacking you, and give every Zelda player PTSD from how terrifying those things were. Now we got the Gloom Hands. Now those guys are scary. I think in terms of like design, the hands are much scarier. I don't know what I prefer though. Guardians and Gloom Hands are really close, because Gloom Hands are so fun. I remember the first time when I was playing through, I got a nice Lionel bow and I got a bunch of bombs, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna use the bomb fruit, jump in the air, and then shoot them all, and then see if I can finally kill these Gloom Hands that have been like terrorizing me for so long. So I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so happy. I wanted to get my phone out to like show my friends who were playing through the game at the same time. And then I see the boss bar appear with Phantom Ganon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was just like such a fantastic experience that I'd pay anything to relive again. Just something so surprising, because yeah, we knew there had to be something in the vein of Guardians, either just bringing Guardians back or adding something new. And now that I'm talking about it, honestly, I think I've convinced myself. I think I prefer Gloom Hands. They're maybe not intimidating in their original stage in terms of damage dealers, but just the overall experience and sort of like presence that they have with, like, you know, creepy little hands reaching up from the ground and stuff like that. Well, not little, they're big hands and stuff like that. They're scary. The Gloom Hands are fantastic. I just went completely off topic. This is going to happen a whole lot in this video, by the way, so be prepared. But we were talking about bosses and stuff like that. We got the Gleeok, you know, there's, yeah, the Gloom Hands like I talked about. The Fluxes, the Flux Constructs in the sky, those guys are pretty fun. They're not nearly as challenging, but it's like each one kind of creates its own environment with its own bricks and stuff around, so like the way you combat each one of the different variants is fun, and the Froxes and stuff. We got our same Lionels and Hinoxes and stuff from the original game, but favorite boss for me is definitely going to be the Gleeoks. The Gleeoks are so challenging, it's crazy. Another story of when I played through the game for the first time. I had like 11 hearts or something like that. I had some decent armor and got my tools ready, and I'd seen these dragons flying around, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try to take out this one. So I went to the Colosseum that had the fire one in the middle, and I like tried sniping him from a distance. I saw the massive bar appear, and then I got one shot by like the flame laser, and I was like, wow, okay, I am not ready for this. You thought Lionels in the first game were challenging. Lionels are like a walk in the park now. I can handle those guys easily. Gleeoks are always going to be challenging, and that's what makes them so much fun. And that's another great strength about the bosses, is because there's so much more rewards for defeating them. Yeah, in Breath of the Wild, you could get their weapons and stuff like that, and then their monster parts you could probably use to enchant some of the gear, if you had the right gear that you needed that for. In Tears of the Kingdom, you get their weapons, if they drop weapons, their materials that you can use to make into weapons. We haven't even touched on the whole crafting system yet. And it's just so much more rewarding to get those materials, because then you can use them however you want. If you fight a Lionel, odds are he might have a sword and a shield, and that's what you'll get. You'll get a sword and a shield. If you fight a Gleeok and stuff like that, he'll drop his parts that are like element infused depending on the type, you know, like a lightning Gleeok or a flame Gleeok and stuff like that. You can make that into a sword, claymore, whatever. Heck, even like shoot it out of a bow if you want. I don't know why you would. But the options there, just the freedom to fight however you want to with the mob drops is fantastic. While we're on the topic of taking different monster parts and like using them as weapons, let's go ahead and run over like the abilities and stuff that you get in this game that are just fantastic. You know, Ultra Hand and Fuse mainly, you know, you got Rewind as well, but the main one people are going to be using is the Ultra Hand and the Fuse, which are just fantastic. It's like the I believe it's called Magnesis from Breath of the Wild. I don't know, it's been quite a few years since I've played that game. But better because it doesn't have to be just like metal objects you move. It can be anything that you find in the environment. And you can attach them together. I mean, just look at all the crazy creations that people have made using Ultra Hand. It's just so much fun, that amount of like creativity that you can have in a big 3D open world game like this, in the sense of, you know, Minecraft and stuff like that, you can make all the redstone contraptions, but that's in like a block, very much a grid-based system. So to have this in like a real sort of looking environment and stuff like that, where it's not grid-based and everything uses physics, rises and falls and stuff like that, is just fantastic. The Ultra Hand mechanic is so cool. Fuse is also was a much needed mechanic, and I'm so happy that they executed it so well. Another big complaint from Breath of the Wild is just it felt like a crafting system was just missing entirely. Yeah, you could use your materials and stuff to make food and stuff like that, but that was kind of it. You couldn't really like make more weapons, and I guess you could upgrade your gear and stuff like that, but maybe crafting gear. I don't know, they don't have like crafting your armor and stuff like that, which is fine. I think getting them through quests and like discovering stuff is better. But in terms of making your own weapons, they definitely use that with the Fuse mechanic, and it is just fantastic. I was expecting there to be a crafting mechanic in this game whenever I picked it up, but I thought it would be something kind of, you know, basic that we've seen in so many other open world survival games. You get like a crafting table or something, or an area that you craft, or a character who crafts stuff for you, and you have to go see them, talk to them, bring the specific materials to make the specific weapon. No, this is just like, if you got a stick and like a piece of raw meat, you can attach that together and use it to just beat monsters up. The possibilities are endless, which is just so much fun, because you can make whatever type of weapon you want. I definitely prefer using swords or spears over claymores, mainly just regular swords, because having a shield is nice, and you can customize those however you want, also using the Zonai devices, like hooking up a nice rocket to a shield to give you some time in the air against a monster. It's just so much fun. Just the Fuse mechanic adds so much creativity to combat, it's awesome. We do have Rewind too, that lets us rewind objects, you know, like back in time, which isn't like, it's definitely like the weakest of the abilities. That's not really used all that much outside of dungeons and stuff like that, but it is still very like much appreciated, like such a creative idea like that. You know, you have rocks that fall from the sky, you can rewind them up to get you up into the clouds that are just so high above the ground it would be nearly impossible to get there otherwise. Just, you can clearly tell a lot of work and like thought went into these abilities that you get in this game, because the Breath of the Wild ones were already fantastic, and they thought, okay, how can we make this better than the previous game? Which I feel like that was the entire thought process for Tears of the Kingdom, is how can we make this a better Breath of the Wild, which they succeeded at 100%. So we've talked about the abilities and the monsters and stuff like that. I now want to touch on the soundtrack a bit, which was definitely a complaint from Breath of the Wild. I didn't really have as much of an issue with it. I think that the sort of more calm, peaceful, very much in the background soundtrack really helped Breath of the Wild, because if you're hearing like the Hyrule Overworld theme or something like that from Ocarina of Time constantly while you're exploring, the kind of loud thematic trumpets and stuff might get just a little obnoxious while you're just wandering through the wilderness hunting for materials or something like that. I don't know. I think the soundtrack for this game, though, one-ups it, because some of the combat songs are just absolutely fantastic. So, my personal favorite soundtrack from the entire game that they added is the Gleeok battle theme, which I'll play right here for you. There's also some other great tracks. Mainly the combat ones are all absolutely fantastic. Like, I know a lot of people like the Colgera battle, so let me play that. And then we also have the Gloom Spawn battle. That one's also fantastic. Kind of like the Guardian theme of this game, you know, kind of creepy and eerie. You know you're facing a tough enemy. Let me play that one. So yeah, all the combat songs are like absolutely fantastic. I also want to touch on like some of the thematic sounds and stuff that'll happen. Like the sound design for this game is top notch, you know, fusing stuff together, just like walking along the ground, you know, like you wouldn't think walking, you know, like in the snow and stuff sounds good, but even though it's like reused from Breath of the Wild, the sound design is fantastic. One great one though I want to touch on is like the noise that it plays when you first enter the depths, you know, that big sort of like trumpet. Let me see if I can find that audio to play here. Yeah, oh, chills. That's so cool. I think the soundtrack is very good. There is a couple issues, though, that I have personally with it, and that's with the reused tracks. So we got a lot of the main open world that just plays while you're wandering through the wilderness tracks are reused. I mean, they're not like, there's not that much noise, you know, there's the occasional few piano notes and stuff like that, quiet in the background. Like, yeah, it's the same thing as the previous game. It just would have been nice to have something, I don't know, maybe a little different. And then some of the basic combat themes, you know, if you're fighting the Bokoblins or the Lizalfos and stuff like that, those combat themes are reused. I mean, all the other combat songs are just fantastic. So I guess I can forgive a reuse of a soundtrack or two. It would just be nice to, you know, have some new stuff to listen to. Touched on most everything I want to talk about, so before I get into kind of like the negatives, I guess, don't worry, there's very few. I'm not going to be a hater, but, you know, as much as I love something, I like to point out some of the flaws, just so that, you know, the next thing can be just improved based on it. You know, just a couple little tweaks is all I'm asking. So last thing I want to touch on is the story, which is, it's all right. It's all right. The story is very much a mixed bag where you got some really great stuff and some not so great stuff. So I feel like Riju and Tulins, I really hope I'm pronouncing their names right because I just read stuff all the time. Their storylines are all great, you know, helping out the Rito and the Gerudo and stuff like that, fighting the Gibdos and then like Colgera and stuff like that. I feel like those storylines are super great. The Goron storyline is definitely much weaker. Sorry, I feel like Unibo's just really annoying. I don't know why they decided to make him say Goro all the time. It just gets on my nerves. And then Prince Sidon's whole arc, it's definitely not like the worst aspect, but you know, it's just kind of basic. Oh boy, though, I have problems with the Zora boss fight and stuff like that at the end. It's not important. We're touching on the story. So, normally Zelda games have a pretty great story. It just seems to be a most, like, kind of a recent trend where the story is taking a sort of, like, backseat to the gameplay and stuff like that, which is fine, but I would prefer if a lot more effort was put into the story. You know, Skyward Sword didn't really do, like, much in terms of the story until the very, very end, you know, like with Demise and setting up, like, basically the entire Zelda timeline just with that very end. It would be nice, though, to get a nice story spread throughout the entire game. I feel like Zelda's story herself is also really strong, you know, going back in time and getting to talk to Rauru and everything like that, and all the old champions, you know, way, way back in the day. That's good, that's strong, and then Zelda's, you know, eventual arc to find out what she has to do in order to get the Master Sword empowered and stuff like that to fix it. I think all that is great, but personally, I feel like they really dropped the ball with Ganon. They could have done something like unique and interesting and more cool, but instead it was just like really basic, you know. It's Ganondorf and he's evil and he's gonna attack and kill people. That's what he's gonna do. We don't have any more of like a complicated story or anything like that. You know, Ocarina of Time, which is drawing the comparisons, the story for that game is fantastic. How, like, Ganondorf was using young Link to access the Sacred Realm so that he could get the Triforce. I don't know, just simple things like that. I remember playing Ocarina of Time as a kid, and I thought I beat the game. I didn't know there was, like, an adult Link segment. I thought I beat the game when I went to the Temple of Time, access the Spirit Realm and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I got the Triforce, and I win. And then he was like, nope, psych, I was using you the whole time to get the Triforce of Power myself, so now you guys are all screwed. And then, like, turning into an adult and walking out and stuff like that and seeing, like, the decay all around, gosh, gives me chills still to this day. That was so cool. I would prefer if there was something more in line like that for this game. I'm not saying you have to go, like, absolutely crazy for making a story, you know, like how most AAA games now are just, like, kind of a really big, long movie where you get to input stuff occasionally, but maybe something to, you know, shake it up a little bit. Part of me almost like, as flawed as Breath of the Wild's kind of story was, it was super basic and kind of ambiguous with a lot of things, and I feel like that helped a whole lot. It's just simple, you know, getting Ganon, who's just, like, Malice incarnate. It's just been so long, because this game definitely takes place at the very, very end of the timeline, whatever the Zelda timeline even is anymore. What do we even know about it at this point? But just something simple like that, seeing the kind of movie reference Princess Mononoke really inspired the first game a lot, and I can definitely now see Nausicaa inspiring this game a lot, especially with, like, the depths and everything like that. Kind of off topic, it's just, the story's okay, but I would have liked if they did something a little more unique, and something that stood out a bit more. Now I'm gonna touch on some negatives. Don't go attacking me in the comments. It's very, very few things that I have to complain about, but the main one, I don't know why this rubs me the wrong way so much, is the stupid Muktarok. I hate that boss so much. That was the first boss that I decided to fight when I was playing the game and stuff like that. I decided to go help the Zora first, because that's what I did in Breath of the Wild, is I went and helped the Zora first. And it's just, it feels so uncreative. Like, it's just incredibly basic. It's not even a difficult boss fight or anything. It's kind of like a mechanic check if you can remove all the mud from, like, the board and everything like that. It's not a very, like, detailed, tough fight and stuff like that, like some of the other bosses. It's just, like, super basic. So I don't know if that's what they were going for, is they wanted, like, much easier bosses for the main story, so that most anybody could do it, and then to have the more difficult bosses for, like, as optional ones, you know, like the Flux Constructs or the Gleeoks and stuff like that. If you wanted to go fight those, you could. They're out there. But still, it would have been nice if we got a lot more difficult main storyline bosses. As awesome as, like, the fight with Colgera and stuff is, just because of, like, the soundtrack and everything, that's also a very easy boss fight. You just fly through the air and, like, shoot the target and stuff like that. I'd say Queen Gibdo is pretty difficult. That's definitely my favorite boss out of the four that you gotta fight. And then, oh, what was the other one? See, I can't even remember what the other one was. It just shows how, like, some kind of unforgettable the main storyline? Oh, it's like the big rock guy for the Gorons. I can't remember what his name is, but that one wasn't like difficult either. It just, a lot of the old Zelda games, I'm gonna link this back to like Ocarina of Time and stuff like that. Those boss fights were super memorable and they stood out a whole lot more, like fighting the Twin Rova and stuff like that in the Spirit Temple. And then King Dondongo, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Nobody sue me or attack me in the comments if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Whatever. Those bosses stood out so much more. Even what's his name? Bongo Bongo in the Shadow Temple. That's like probably my favorite boss from Ocarina of Time. So simple, but his design, there's just like so much story and stuff behind it that you can take away from like Bongo Bongo maybe being like a prisoner of the Sheikah that was tortured and stuff like that. Can I say tortured on this site? I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter, but it would be nice if a lot of the bosses had a bit more story behind them, and yeah, screw the Mukta Rock. The Mukta Rock sucks. My only other major complaint is just the same issue that Breath of the Wild had once again. Like, they improved so many things from the game, but there are still a few issues that carried over from the previous one. And that's going to be that the story, you reach the very end of the story, and then it just, like, ends. I feel like it ends even more abruptly than Breath of the Wild story does. Like, oh, it's Link and Zelda back together. Boom. That's it. What happened to all the other characters, that, like, we were talking about? Does the world, like, revert 100% back to normal? Are the monsters gone forever and stuff like that? What do Zelda and Link do to kind of rebuild Hyrule? I think it would have been fantastic if we had a post game, so that kind of like the Tarrytown quest in Breath of the Wild, where you go out and gather materials to help rebuild this town. What if you could do that for Lookout Landing and that area in front of Hyrule Castle and start rebuilding it by gathering materials? That would be so much fun. Again, Zelda games, though, aren't really known for their post-game, so I can understand why there isn't anything major in like that regards for the post-game. But since they are shaking things up a whole lot with like the open world format, and a lot of open world games have a post-game and stuff like that, it just would be nice, to get something small, even if it's just like a few extra cutscenes at the end to show what happens to these characters, because there is not going to be a Tears of the Kingdom sequel. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is the complete story. There's not going to be a third one in the arc wrapping it up. So this is the end that we see of this reincarnation of Zelda and the hero of the Wild. At the end of the day, though, this game is just, like, as close to perfection as you can get, I believe, personally, just because I love open-world games so much. This is as close to being a perfect game, especially in this day and age, that we can possibly get. This game is an absolute masterpiece. If you watch this video and you haven't picked it up, go ahead and play the game. If you've played Breath of the Wild and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to get another, like, open world game like that, get Tears of the Kingdom. It's so much more fun. And then maybe you didn't even play Breath of the Wild, but you heard all the great things about Tears of the Kingdom and you're like, do I really want to go back and play Breath of the Wild the first time? You don't have to. You can 100% start with Tears of the Kingdom, which I think is another great strength, is it has a very good jumping in point. Yeah, it would be nice to have a lot of the cues and stuff like that from Breath of the Wild for the story going forwards, but it is by no means necessary. But I mean, anyway, that's about it. Yeah, this game's a masterpiece. I just wanted to make this video kind of just like singing its praises and stuff like that for the 1-year anniversary. I still remember, gosh, kind of sad, but like when this game came out, it was probably one of the best days of my entire life. I got up early to go wait outside Best Buy because I had my copy pre-ordered. I went there a little early so I could run to the Chick-fil-A across the street. I got some chicken minis. Gosh, Chick-fil-A chicken minis are so good. If you hadn't had those, do yourself a favor and get them. It's a breakfast item. It's like one of the nuggets and like the bread. So good. But anyway, did that, got the minis, Tears of the Kingdom, went home, played it for like 11 hours straight or something like that, and then did D&D in the evening with my friends, and then started playing again. Fantastic day, just boosted so much by this game. It just shows like how much it stands out, and I think this game, as fond as Breath of the Wild is still remembered, this game is going to go down as in history definitely as one of the greatest Zelda games ever made. period. Anyway, I mean, that's all I've got. Yeah, here I go rambling on at the end of the video again. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.